The Graffiti and Street Art Digital Library was founded on the belief that this artwork deserves a place on the table and should be preserved for others to view and appreciate. Graffiti dates back throughout human history. Cave paintings, ancient Egypt, Pompeii, monastic cathedrals. This artwork as it currently stands suffers from its short lifespan and often difficult geographical placement. This prototype is trying to address these very real concerns.
In order for the Graffiti and Street Art Digital Library to run smoothly, digitization standards were created. Digitization of collections needs to maintain standards and best practices in order to hold high-quality images, audio, and text. Digitizing materials allows for original documents to be viewed by anyone, anywhere, and to limit the deterioration from handling. The first thing we're going to look at are the standards for digitizing still images. When scanning in images, 600 dpi, or dots per inch, were used. 600 allows for clear, unpixelated photos. The format chosen was JPEG because the images appear clear and visible. For color photos, 24-bit RGB was used. RGB are colors red, green, and blue, mixed together produce a broad spectrum of colors. 24-bit color is also the highest color depth typically used. The palette contains 16,777,216 colors, which is about the number of colors the human eye can distinguish. The 8-bit color scale was used for black and white images. 8-bit is 256 values of gray, which is the maximum number of grays. Audio standards are the next area we're going to look at. 20 kilohertz were used for audio. The human ear cannot hear over the range of 20 kilohertz. For optimum audio, we went with the highest possible hearing range. The format chosen was WAV files. WAV is an uncompressed file format that is the closest match to compact disc quality. The last standards we're going to review are text documents. Text documents were scanned in at 300 dpi. 300 is the best resolution for OCRing. Optical character recognition, or OCR, was used so that the text would be searchable. Having searchable text is important because it allows for text to be easily found by users. Bitonal colors were used because OCR algorithms are designed to work with it. We're also going to look at digitization standards for the moving image. The format that was used was Material Exchange Format, which is MXF. 640 by 480 resolution, which is based upon a 4:3 original aspect ratio. Progressive scanning was also used. And finally, 30 megabytes per second.
Hi, I'm Sarah Seymore. I'm a part of the group that created this Graffiti and Street Art Digital Library. I'm going to talk about the metadata, vocabulary, control, and tags that we use in our prototype. I'm going to go through the fields, qualifiers, and values of Dublin Core that we're using, as well as discuss how the metadata is helping us with the one-to-one principle. It's describing the digital object and the original artwork, the piece itself, and the control vocabulary that we're using, and the complexities that the metadata is helping to alleviate as we're trying to discuss the fine lines between public art, graffiti, and street art. These are hard to define, and the metadata kind of helps with defining some of it. So to show an example of the metadata, I'm going to be focusing on this object right here, which is a mural in New Brunswick. So let's go to the backend. And this is editing the item and adding the Dublin Core terminologies. These are the fields, and these are the values. And you'll see any qualifiers that we're using I've added in the value section. So I will point those out. Okay, and to begin, we'll start with the first element, field, whichever you want to call them. So we have title, and this is the title of the work itself. So the nature of graffiti art, a lot of it is entitled unless the artist, is commissioned or wants to make it known. This piece, we don't know. I've contacted the organization that's a part of commissioning this piece, and I'll get more into that, but it's unknown right now. We are going to name some of our pieces with some descriptors just so we don't have a lot of unknown pieces. So for this one, I'll show you it again. So for this one, we're thinking like young African-American girl or something like that to describe the piece. So subject is the next one. For subject, you could use any subject headings, Library of Congress subject headings, or any sort of local nomenclature or terminology that you want to use. But for our digital library, we're going to be focusing more on tags and sort of the potential that we could use those for. So that's what we're going to be focusing on, and so we're going to leave that blank. And that's one of the cool things about Dublin Core. You don't have to use all the elements set if you don't want to. It's very customizable. So next is description, right here. And we're just adding short descriptions of the pieces, either about how they look or what if they were created in any in relation to any sort of event, or if we do know the artist and we are speaking to the artist, if the artist has a description of it, we'll put that in this value field right here. And so this one, I'll go back to the picture. This one right here was created as sort of this community effort in this day of where a lot of artists came into New Brunswick and participated in what's called the Raritan River Art Walk and painted a bunch of murals along this ramp on the side of New Brunswick on the right next to the Raritan River. Some of you might be familiar with it. And the organization responsible for this was Albert Cavu or Cavus, I'm not sure, but so they're the ones who sponsored this event. So this is a publicly commissioned event. This isn't graffiti per se. This is something that was allowed by the city of New Brunswick. Creator. So this is where we're kind of getting into the one-to-one principle. We want to talk about the creator, the artist of the piece, but also we are creators for making the digital instance and putting it online. We're trying to focus more on the artworks themselves, and we do talk about our digitization in other fields, and that's where we talk about the one-to-one principle, and I'll get to that. But for this, unfortunately, once again, we don't know the artist. I have contacted the organization, and they do have a website, and hopefully they'll get back to me, but unfortunately right now it is unknown, the artist for this work. Okay, next, source. And some of these fields can get kind of confusing, so it's really great that Omeka gives you a little definition right here in case it's ambiguous. So for this, it could have been the artist, it could be us for making it accessible, but once again, we're focusing on the source from which it's derived. So I put the hyperlink to the Raritan River Art Walk page and from the Albert Camus Foundation. That seems to be the most reasonable for that field. Publisher. This would be great for text or anything that's already been published or edited elsewhere. So I'm not filling this in for this piece since we're the ones making it accessible once again. Okay, date. Date, we're both talking about when the piece was created and when the piece was digitized. So that's why we have two different values and qualifiers for this field. So the qualifier we have for when it was created, we have created, and then in the ISO date format, which is the ISO formats are available online. That's our controlled vocabulary that we're using. So the date is from Albert Camus when the festival was held, so that's the day when this piece was created. And then we have issued, which is for when it was digitized. So this is the date in the ISO format, once again, of when I captured the piece. Contributor, once again, this could be anyone making, like it says, contributions to the resource. It could be the artist, it could be Albert Camus, it could be ourselves, because we're the ones contributing to its digitization and putting it up online, but once again, we're not focusing on that, so I've decided to leave that blank. Rights, also very tricky, because even though this work was created in conjunction with this activism, this community effort, and it was created by a specific artist, it's also in the public domain and commissioned by from the city of New Brunswick. So it's kind of tricky who has the rights over this. Intellectually, yes, the artist. Publicly, it's on public property and it's owned by the government. So it's kind of a weird situation with graffiti and street art and public art. So I've left this blank. We're deferring really to the artist and the community effort, the Raritan River Art Walk, for this piece. So for relation, we have a related resource. As far as graffiti goes, it doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's not like a piece of art that hangs on a wall that can be moved. The canvas is in a public space, and that leads to a lot of insecurity. It can be tagged over, it can be edited by any other person. So for this, we really wanted to give the context of the piece. So in our database, our digital library, we have a lot of panorama shots. And so I've linked this panorama shot right here to show really the pieces that are next to it and the context of the entire canvas, if you will, which is really just the concrete wall that this piece is depicted on. Okay, the next field we're talking about is format. And once again, we are addressing the one-to-one principle. We want to talk about the format of the piece itself and then the format of the digital item that we're managing in our digital library. So for the digital item, we have image JPEG, and this is using the DCMI vocabulary type, which is found on the Dublin Core website. It's very easy to get to. And so that's for the digital instance, but for the physical instance, we are using with medium as the qualifier for both of these. The medium is spray painting for the physical instance, and that is a term that it might seem very colloquial, but it's from the Getty Art and Architecture online thesaurus. So that's our controlled vocabulary we're using there. Language. This you would also use the DCMI vocabulary type. Vocabulary type for this one. If it was a text or had any writing on it, we would put the language, and if it was English, most likely it would be EN, which is the DCMI vocabulary. So type and format are really easy to get confused, but this is a still image, and that's also the DCMI vocabulary terminology for that. Moving image would be for a video, and text would be for text. So those are actually already programmed in Omeka, and you just choose from a drop-down menu on another page. It's very easy to find that out. Identifier. So identifier is like a unique record identifier, a URL, or a URI. And for our database, we are using unique ones to order and number our pieces. So this was the very first item that was added, so this is the unique item identifier here. So coverage is also something that can be divided up into have multiple inputs. You can have spatial coverage, which we're using the location, as you see, New Brunswick, New Jersey, and that is using the Getty thesaurus of geographic names. And you can also have temporal coverage if you wanted to, which could be a century if you didn't know the date exactly. We do know the date exactly. It could be an era per se. We didn't think this was really needed since a lot of our pieces are fairly modern. It could be used though, so that's just an option. So these are all the fields in this column, once again, just to reiterate, the values, and then any qualifiers that we're giving for our metadata. And lastly, I will talk about our tags. We have an alphabetized list of tags that's accessible from the homepage, but right now I just wanted to show you what the tags look like within the item level, and this is the same item we were looking at for the metadata. So here they are right here, and all of the tags are hyperlinked, so if you click on one, it brings up the feed, the search results of all the other items that have this same tag. I want to talk briefly about why we are using tags and the purpose of them. As I said, we did not assign subject headings to these pieces because we wanted the other metadata fields to be controlled. But the tags we wanted to represent sort of the common terms within graffiti and that the graffiti artists use. In our additional resources, we list a link to a Wikipedia page, actually, that is a glossary, a dictionary for graffiti, and we refer to this a lot, especially using their terms, the artist terms, and we wanted to use these to sort of contextualize these pieces even more. So to define a few, I can talk about a throw-up. We use that a lot. So throw-ups are very simplified graffiti pieces, graffiti artworks that are done very quickly, usually only have a few colors. But a piece, for example, I keep on reusing the word piece a lot. It's a very detailed, time-intensive or mural that's been painted. And some of the other ones we define, and we just thought it would be a good idea to use the terminology that the artists themselves use. I want us to look at the back end of this piece. So this is the one we were just looking at. Like I said, here's the metadata we were looking at, and this is the back end where we edit it. So to manage the tags, you go to the Tags tab right here within this item record, and you see it's really easy. You just type them in and hit enter, or you can separate them if you're doing several with a comma, and they're added below. So just to double check, you can go to the main tag tab right here, and you can see all the different tags that have been added and how many times they were used. Then you see that there's the total, and if there's any misspellings or something's capitalized that you don't think should be, you could look here and manage it here. I hope that wasn't a too overly detailed explanation of our metadata, vocabulary control, and tags, but I wanted to give an idea of how we're trying to organize and have some sort of control over this very uncontrollable, undefined art form, but also trying to stay true to it and represent it as we would hope the artists themselves would like to be represented. Thank you.
Hi everyone, this is Megan. For our graffiti and street art digital library, we decided to use the software Omeka. Omeka is a free open source web publishing tool that enables you to build and display collections on the web. And although there are a lot of open source software options, we decided to go with Omeka because it's free, of course. It includes a variety of plugins and customizable visual themes. It also adheres to rigorous web standards and complies with Dublin Core Metadata Standards. And as you can see on their website, they have extensive documentation with screencasts and tutorials that make installation and setup really easy and straightforward. They also have a very active user and developer community online. So whenever you run into any issues, the forums are a great place to go looking for answers. So I'm just going to go to our digital library, and we decided to go with a dark visual theme. This is the night option under the seasons theme, which is one of the prepackaged themes. You can also upload a theme, but we thought this was a good option because it really makes the colors in the graffiti pop and stand out. And this theme is also great because it provides a really nice, clean design that has a nice layout. You can see the featured item on the left, featured collection, and then recently added items. And then if you go to the main menu, you can browse items, you can browse through the collections, you can even look up items on the map, which we were able to do using the geolocation plugin. So there are actually 2 pages on the map. 1 and 2, and you can click on a location and see a picture of the item. We also have an about page, an additional resources page, and a page with the definitions for our tags, and we created these additional pages using the Simple Pages plugin. So now I'm just going to go to the back end of our digital library, and the dashboard here provides an overview of what's kind of going on behind the scenes. And as you can see, we have 95 items that we organized into 8 collections. And we took advantage of several plugins, including the geolocation one that I mentioned, as well as Simple Pages and social bookmarking. And Omeka is great because it allows you to upload any kind of file type, including text, video, audio, and images. So we mostly have images, but we also have a few other file types. And there's unlimited storage space. It's basically just limited by what is available on your server. So that means we can continue to build our collection. And adding items is extremely straightforward. Simply go to the Items tab, click on Add an Item, then go to Files. You can browse through your computer files, and I'm in the wrong place, I'm sorry. Okay, so let's see, here I have a file. I added that. I can make it public. I can add it to a specific collection and add the appropriate tags. I can include it its location on the map, and then assign the appropriate metadata, which is what Sarah is going to be going over. So as you can see, Omeka is great software to use. It has a lot of plugins, customizable themes, and I think the end product is really a well-organized and visually appealing digital collection.